Welcome back to the Vitality Vision podcast. I'm your host, Greg Bennett. And as always, I'm joined by the president of Voloridge Health, Barry Miller, and the CEO and the CSO, David Vogel. And today we dive deep into the world of Eudemonia Summit, where we spent the last 3 to 4 days in Palm Beach, Florida, coming out to the world with Voloridge Health and everything that we're doing here. David did an incredible talk once again, which you can find on our YouTube channel as well. We also then take a deep dive into our big findings that everybody should be really looking at as they get their blood work. That's things like Cystatin C, hemoglobin A1C, CRP, ApoB, and GGT. They're the big 5 that everybody should be getting when they get their blood work done. What we'd love from you guys going forward is if you have any questions that you'd love us to answer, please send them our way. I'll put it in the link here and you can send us any email of any questions you have. Please comment, please share, and we'd love you to subscribe. We're really enjoying this journey of sharing our own journey of Voloridge Health and building it and everything that we're finding in the data science. First thing is, we've just had a really big weekend this past weekend. Voloridge Health, David, you've done some talks over the last 18 months and they've been amazing. And you did do a talk again this past weekend at the Eudemonia Summit. But it felt like a real coming out for us. We had an amazing booth at one of the big, I guess you call it longevity wellness conferences in the US. And Voloridge Health had such a presence there. You guys went down, checked it out. What was your feeling with the overall summit? What did you think about our booth and the team and everything else?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great feeling to see our products out there, to see the booth was packed constantly. People were engaged, getting their body measurements, their in-body, the grip strength, getting all that tests and sort of seeing what the scores might look like.
Yeah, it was totally awesome. It was totally packed. I couldn't get over it. Yeah,
it was super cool. Like you said, it was sort of a first significant exposure type coming out event for us. And the team, first of all, did an amazing job. There was a ton of team members that were shouldering the work at the booth, and we processed about 150 people went through the booth to have tests done.
Yeah, so take us through that. What was that full process?
So there was blood pressure, waist measurement, a grip strength measurement, and in-body. Mm-hmm. And so the objective of this was, to introduce measurements, especially like in-body and grip strength, that people don't ordinarily get to do. Mm. Obviously, things like waist and blood pressure are usually more readily available. But to show them how these types of metrics are used in our system then to provide scores, health scores, right? So we're providing these different things. Oh, one last thing I forgot that's super important is lipids. We did lipid and glucose tests. Yeah. So on the blood biomarker side, there was some phlebotomist work to be done and collected blood from folks. So those were the 5 things. These are obviously a subset of all the important variables that David and the team put into our models, but enough that we could give people some representation. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I think we hoped for and expected, and certainly saw this with spades, is that people love an experience where they get to have some kind of test done, especially if it's something that they don't ordinarily, like I said, have access to. So that was super cool. But again, hats off to the team. They did an awesome job, processing 150 people. We had a wait list through, the 3-day event. And maybe some pride coming out. I think we had the best booth in the
by
whole
far.
show.
By far. That's not pride. I walked around the whole thing, and I do think we did have the best booth. I think it was amazing. And again, the team's credit, it was really outstanding. David, why? I mean, you mentioned those 5 things that we test, and they were all free, right? We didn't charge people for that. Yeah. It was no kind of a cool gift.
Yeah. We gave them swag to boot.
And swag. So you got to do all of that. You get through all the process. Was there a reason those 5 things were chosen in terms of data feedback?
It was more for user engagement. Those were things that people may not normally test. So again, grip strength, people aren't normally testing that, and it's such a strong predictor. No pun intended, maybe. And the in-body, but I think people also left with some useful information too, because they don't always have access to these devices and gadgets. And even though our health scores are soon to be released, they at least know what to test, what to add, and basically they know. And again, for those who many of you who weren't there, just telling your doctor to add these five biomarkers to your blood test: Cystatin C, GGT, ApoB, A1C, and CRP. The usual. Again, when our scores do come out, those will be meaningful. Those are the things to be added.
I want to circle back to those five things a little bit later. I want to sort of stay on right now. The energy of the actual conference and our presence there. Were you guys a little bit surprised at the amount of people we had going through? I've spoken to team members. They said they spoke to thousands of people. We were very prominent where we were positioned. Barry, you mentioned a wait list.
Yep. We had a wait list
for the app.
For the app. Yeah, we had about 250, 260 people get on the wait list, which is great because, as I mentioned before, we processed 150 people through the booth experience. So to have 100 more than went through the booth experience obviously shows that people were stopping by, and even if they didn't get to go through the booth experience, they still got enough information from the team that they said, yeah, sign me up. I'm interested in seeing what you guys are coming out with.
That's cool. Did you guys get a chance to walk the expo? Was there anything else that stood out to you over the conversations you had with anybody else?
There were a number of interesting booths, maybe not in particular. There were other platforms out there that were expressed interest in integrating with us. But I think for me, it was just so encouraging to see like the consistent crowd around our booth. I think it was different. It told us that people are ready for what we have to offer in terms of being able to measure their health.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I talked to a bunch of different exhibitors and folks that were there. As Dave mentioned, some of these are candidates for our products and services, whether it's through integration with their platforms and what they do, or affiliate type relationships. There's a variety of different ways that we can engage with the businesses that were at the show. So I think we had good conversations around that. And these range from, health platforms to clinics that might have one clinic, might have 5 or 10 clinics. So lots of different shapes and sizes of folks that were there. But it's also, it's a neat show for the biohacker in all of us, right? There's so many things that you can see there. A lot of it's stuff that maybe you've seen before or heard of, but I spent a good chunk of yesterday, maybe an hour, just going to different booths, learning more about stem cell production and where that's harvested from. And I learned just a tidbit fact that almost all of the stem cells by the reputable companies, I'm told, in the U.S. come from embryos or placentas rather in big difference, placentas in Utah.
Wow.
So, just learning some of the things, and I think I've shared with you guys, I also learned that one of the agents that's used for the stem cells is that DMSO, which is dimethyl sulfoxide. DMSO is something I've been squirting in my ear as a symptom for my tinnitus symptoms to try to eliminate it. So it's kind of interesting. I was talking to a guy yesterday, and I said, "Well, walk me through the process. How does it go from placenta to stem cell?" And he was like, sharing his information. He goes, and then we use DMSO. And I was like, wait, I know what that is. I use that. So,
have you found that working, by the way? We've had a lot of conversations with
limited.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's definitely, it vacillates the intensity of it. So some days or weeks I'm like, oh, this is working. I found the solution to this problem. And other days, I feel like I'm in a movie where a bomb just went off, and you're like, oh gosh, this is. But
you're very transparent, mate. We're getting to know you on this show. It's like he's got his tinnitus and kidneys, and the point is, I think we're all leaning into this, this world of health and proactive health, because none of us are perfect. We're all got things we're working on, and if anything, that Eudemonia Summit, I walk around and the energy of the place. From what I understand, there was about 5,000 attendees turned up. We sometimes harp on the fact that proactive health is only 3% of spend in the healthcare world, but it feels like it's just growing. You go to these kind of events and there's this enthusiasm, there's this like people want longevity, people want wellness, and we're playing a major part in that. And I think that's really cool. That's how I felt walking around the whole place. I was like, this is awesome.
I love the fact that everybody was exercising. There were people out there in yoga classes, trampoline classes. I mean, normally you go to health conferences and you go to the
eat a donut.
Well, the health conference could have thousands of people, and then you go to the weight room in the hotel where everybody's staying, and there's like 2 people.
Right. Yeah. This was actually...
And this is like people actually walking the walk, so I love that feeling.
Cool. Yeah. But David, I want to shift your talk. You've now done talks, quite a few. You spoke here last year at Eudemonia, when I say here, down in Palm Beach. You've spoken at the... IFM, and then this one.
Actually, I had 2 this week. I had
2 this week.
Yep. I had Thursday at Morgan Stanley up in New York, and then Saturday at Eudemonia. So
I saw you on LinkedIn. You guys did the opening bell on the stock exchange.
That was Wednesday or Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning we went to the exchange, and it's an awesome experience. Dave and I were, saying to each other, "Gosh, we've been in the hedge fund business for 16 years, and we've never been to the floor of the stock exchange." So our friends at Morgan Stanley really hooked us up, had a great experience for us, showed us around. We had a great pre-meeting with them before we went on the exchange floor, and it was neat. It's probably more of a television studio now than it is an actual physical trading exchange, which was interesting to see, but it was an awesome experience. Yeah,
I saw that on your LinkedIn, and I was like, I don't know, if you're in the space on the financial side like you guys are, we got to remember, everybody listening, is like these guys have built an incredible hedge fund with Voloridge Investment Management over the last 16 years, using the same quantitative data science that we're now bringing into health. Mm-hmm. And so you're combining both of those at the same time. So what was your talk on to Morgan and Stanley then?
That was more like a fireside chat. It was a keynote talk first in the morning. And they asked a lot about the history of my career in data science, how that led to a world-class hedge fund, and then the transitions to health. And I shared some findings with them too, and they found it very, very interesting. So it was a little more well-rounded talk, whereas Eudemonia was that talk was focused on the health side.
Yeah. So let's dive into that talk a bit. You mentioned right at the top there the 5 key biomarkers that everybody should be looking at when they go visit their physician. I thought it was interesting. One of the questions you were asked at the end of the talk was, "What if my doctor doesn't want to? What if my doctor won't let me do that?" And you gave a great answer, but at the end of it, you said, "Look, find another doctor if they're not going to allow you to pick these 5, right?" Yeah. So let's step through those. Cystatin C, we've done a whole episode on this. If this is a first-time listener, please go back and listen to that episode. Mm. Amazing episode on Cystatin C. But give us the high level. Why is Cystatin C, in that 5? So
Cystatin C is a measure of kidney health. Mm. Basically, the lower the value, the better. Mm-hmm. It's much more accurate than creatinine, which is it's sort of the cheaper one to measure. That's on our blood test. Again, none of these. Again, Cystatin C it's not going to be covered generally by insurance. But if you actually want to measure your health, it's something that should be added. And
what are they looking for? What's a Cystatin C? Can we give a range here, or is it dependent on age or sex?
Yeah. So it does depend on age and sex a little bit. Mm. So I could say certainly ideal is generally about it does range, but we'll say 0.8-ish is very healthy versus getting over 1.0 is starting to be less optimal, and 1.2, 1.3 is pretty high. Mm-hmm. But one thing people don't realize, it's actually the number one predictor of a cardiac event as well.
Wow.
So it's a measure of its kidney function. That's at the root. It's way more predictive than any of the cholesterols. And I think the close second on predicted cardiac events was hemoglobin A1C. So again, it's one that many doctors don't even really know what Cystatin C is if they're not a specialist on kidneys. But we want to get that information out there. Hey, just add this to your test.
So just as a reminder, I think I may have mentioned this on a prior podcast that we had, but I think it bears mentioning again since it's so important and puts a pin in what David was sharing about Cystatin C. So a dear friend of ours was being diagnosed with kidney disease or was on the doorstep of being diagnosed based on his creatinine level. And because he's involved in what we're doing in the beta stage, he saw his Cystatin C level relative to his creatinine, and David prompted him and said, hey, the relationship of these numbers, Cystatin C is more important based on our research and our findings. So he went to his doctor, showed the doctor, hey, I had my blood test taken with, Voloridge, and here's what the Cystatin C looks like, which the doctor hadn't screened him for, to our understanding. Long story short, the doctor said, well, that relationship looks peculiar, that the Cystatin C is so low, so he had him take the test again. I think he might have actually taken the Cystatin C test twice. And it came back like David was saying, like sub 0.8, even though his creatinine level is very high.
Yeah.
Long story short, the doctor cleared him of kidney disease as a result of this more expansive and thorough testing. So
how far along do you know when you say the kidney disease, they say stage 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
do you know any of those numbers?
I think it was early, very early.
Yeah.
He hadn't been diagnosed before. It was just the percolation of his creatinine level that was causing the concern on the physician's part.
Yeah.
We see evidence in our data that a pretty good percentage of people may be misdiagnosed with chronic kidney disease. Again, I don't have the exact numbers, and we're not qualified to say misdiagnosed, but we've changed lives just by saying get this measured and take it to your doctor.
Yeah, enough that you guys should listen to us and actually do this.
Like you kind of know, because someone who's very athletic, active, more muscle mass is going to have more creatinine. And that's right. And in that case, it's a good thing.
You have the backup. Yeah,
it's not, and the kidneys could be perfectly functional.
Yeah. All right. So Cystatin C is the big one. Like we've mentioned, we have done a whole episode on that one. That is a major finding, and definitely one you need to go get tested. Hemoglobin A1C, another one we've done a whole episode on, metabolic health. This one, David, for you, is a real standout. Make sure we get it tested.
Yes, absolutely. Again, it's right up there with Cystatin C as a top predictor of cardiac events. Again, way more predictive than any of the cholesterols, which we're very focused on. And again, even if you're not at a pre-diabetic level, higher is still an elevated risk than lower. So again, test that, and it's also predictive of, obviously, it's a huge predictor of type 2 diabetes, but not the only predictor.
Most blood panels would have that on it, though, right?
A1C
this compared to Cystatin C.
It's definitely more common than Cystatin C.
You're not having to
but
go
it's
to
not always included.
I think it's like 50-50, and sometimes it's covered by insurance.
Okay. All right. Good. Yeah. So that one, please also go listen to that episode we did. That was another really great deep dive. CRP. Explain to me, CRP. Is that one that people are typically getting on a panel? And what is it?
And that one's not typically measured at the doctor. It's not covered by insurance. A lot of these platform companies with advanced tests do add that because it is a measure. It is a known measure of inflammation, and that inflammation is makes it a high predictor of cardiac events as well as other diseases.
All right, and GGT, liver enzyme.
GGT is top predictor of liver disease. So if we typically have in our panels ALT, AST, and they are decent predictors of or indicators of liver health, but GGT is the top one, and that should be added.
All right. And then the final one, ApoB. This doesn't seem like it's going to be one that's on a typical panel. How does somebody go test for ApoB?
And this is one typically on advanced lipids panels, again, not generally on an insurance covered panel. We sort of looked at all those advanced lipids, particle sizes, all this. It turns out ApoB is important not for the reason that is often talked about. Like it's talked about, it's very correlated with LDL cholesterol as a predictor of cardiac event. Turns out it's not that top of a predictor of a cardiac event, but what we've figured out is the ratio between LDL and ApoB is a top predictor. You see all these different lipid ratios and different tests, and the most important one usually isn't there, which is LDL divided by ApoB. And that's a top predictor of about all of our disease groups, where higher is actually better. Higher LDL to ApoB, less disease.
All right, guys. So there you have it, the top 5, which if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see those there, but I'll go through them again. Cystatin C, make sure you add that. Hemoglobin A1C, CRP, GGT, and ApoB. They're your top 5. That was a big part of your talk. But one of the things I actually really enjoyed about your talk, and for me, it's kind of, it almost comes down to why this company even exists to some degree, is basically your story of sort of 10, 12 years ago. I don't know the exact time frame, but almost having that kind of like, I'll call it a born again moment for the sake of it. But it's like, hang on. And you guys have used this term, and I love it. Wealth without health is unremarkable. And that's kind of where the catalyst of change almost comes, is going, look, we can have a great hedge fund here, but if I'm not healthy, there's no good. And you started taking a deep dive into your health, but you noticed that your LDL wasn't changing for 10 years. Getting all this blood work, you're doing all these interventions, you're eating well, you're sleeping well, hang on.
I even got him to stop eating McDonald's.
And you got him to stop eating McDonald's, right. Episode 1, if you want to listen to that story.
It's been a while since the last Big Mac.
Yeah. But it was like, for me, that was like, when you do these talks, for me, that's the bit that jumps out. I love it, because it's kind of like going, hang on, I did all of this. And yet there's one biomarker, the bad cholesterol, LDL, and everyone's yelling and screaming about, actually is not changing. This doesn't make sense. And I love that as almost like, this is how Voloridge Health is here. Because you start to question, well, hang on, if that's not working. Would you agree? Is that kind of your catalyst of change moment?
Yeah, that was really the catalyst. And I was fortunate that for me, very generic changes improved my health, because again, at the time, I couldn't measure it until just a couple of years ago. And then I could see that the risk was dropping as I felt I was being healthier. But how can you personalize the medicine without being able to measure progress? Again, for some people, maybe a high intensity exercise works better, and for other people, it might be weights. But if you can't measure it, how do you know what's right for you? I think people can sort of kind of tell, but having those metrics is extremely helpful to be able to focus in on a personalized plan.
And so that's when you started to go, okay, there's more to this. You find the UK Blood Biobank. You start really leaning into your strengths, which is data science and understanding how to extract insights from data science, not just having lots of it. And that was the big moment. And you started saying, okay, how do I find out what biomarkers actually mean the most to my health?
Exactly. I'd say that was our first great data set that gave us that aha moment. Yeah. Since then, we've added many other data sets to that.
So guys, with everything we're building here, the club, all the scores, the research we're doing, the app coming out, I've been thinking about it myself. What have I learned this past year, the last 12 months working here, about myself that I didn't actually know? And what have I actually done to try and improve my health from the knowledge that we've gained? Is there anything that jumps out to you, Barry? You want to go?
Well, I think one of the early learnings for me, and this is something that I talked with a handful of people about at Eudemonia, I like asking people the question, because and you and I have talked about this, Greg, how even it seems like the most astute biohacker type folks haven't thought about this before, which is, if you think of the reference ranges on a typical blood test that you look at and ask yourself, should it have the same range for you and your spouse, your children, your parents, your grandparents? It seems sort of impractical or illogical that reference range would be the same, right? So I think just learning what is the dialed in part of the range for a biomarker that you want to live in, which is one of the things that David's team has built as a model to give you that representation on a personalized level. Again, gender, age, et cetera. So understanding blood biomarkers, for me, and has been a journey over the last couple of years, understanding, where I want to live and then really having the tool set to do that, right? And I have it in the palm of my hand now, based on our models, the ability to see, okay, where is my, creatinine level, my cystatin level, my GGT, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. I was chatting with Barry last night about it, David. My wife, Laura, she's probably the most in-depth person in the world when it comes to health and diving deep into it. Honestly, David, you and her could geek out for days, I'm sure. But I remember driving home with her once and I said, do you ever wonder where those ranges come from? She's like, no, I never thought about it. It's like, it's funny how people just take something and we pose a question that's kind of right in your face and nobody even leans into, well, where do these ranges come from? And I think I've heard you say that, there are heuristic approach, doctors have come up with that.
It's just decided, right?
It's just decided. It just is because
it's real the longer.
you got two markers next to each other, LDL cholesterol and white blood cell count.
Yeah.
And someone decided, okay, let's make the range really, really low for LDL, and therefore everybody is out of the range. But which is the bigger predictor? White blood cell count is twice as predictive. But someone decided to draw the range so that 97% of people are in range. So we don't.
And why would they want to do that? Is it to get people on pharmaceutical drugs? Is it not to go down I'm sure our general counsel is going to listen to me and cut Greg off here right now. But until he does, let me keep talking.
I like to at least presume it was with good intentions, like LDL was presumed, like the researchers discovered an association, even though they didn't compare it to other markers, and they said, okay, there is an association. High LDL people had higher prevalence of cardiac events, so therefore someone decided let's get it as low as we possibly can, and let's set the range. And then no one really looked at white blood cell count, and maybe if they had, they might have set the reference range a little lower so people would pay attention to that.
But going on top of that, again, I'll probably get cut off here, but if you found, though, if your LDL is under 100, your dementia score is going way up, right? The likelihood of a dementia score? You've seen that?
Yes, absolutely. So lower, the people actually in the range, the recommended range, under 100 LDL, without any cholesterol meds, have 40 or 50%, I think over 50% increased likelihood of dementia.
Wow. It was funny. I was sitting at the kids' karate the other night, and I was sitting next to a couple of mums, and they were showing me, their new Oura Ring, and then they were going through their blood profiles and everything. And I said, "Oh, can I just have a look?" I said, "Look, I'm not a physician. I'm just, a guy interested in health. Can I just have a quick look?" And they both showed me their LDL scores and said, "Oh yeah, I have to get this down. I have to get this down." And it was 140, for one of them, and 148 for the other. And coming from now this world of Voloridge Health and what we're exploring, I was like, no, you're good. And again, I'm not a physician. I'm just saying the data that we're tending to find is actually saying that they're in a pretty good range.
Right. And it turns out, again, if you're 140, 150, again, which is where I'm at, and most people are sort of in that middle. It's only really about a 10% increase in risk for a cardiac event, but the trade-off is huge reduction in risk on so many other things.
So many other ones, yeah.
And it's also very important for me to state that these are associations in the data and not causal. So I'm absolutely not saying that low LDL is causing dementia or these heart conditions, but it's an indicator it's a predictor of much less optimal outcomes.
We're just looking at the data. And this is what the data is telling us. But Barry, you've mentioned, you've looked at your creatinine levels and you talked about your creatine supplement intake. How's that impacted the way you're taking supplements and things?
Yeah, I think, going back to one of our other slogans is, you can only improve what you can measure. The ability now in our system to be able to hop around and see, I started about 6 months ago taking creatine, which I hadn't taken for, a decade. I started taking it in part because of the cognitive benefits that are, being cited or suggested. And so I started taking 5 grams, which I think is fairly typical. And my kidney scores, plummeted as a result of 5 grams. My Cystatin C went up, my creatinine level went up. So I realized, that's either not the supplement for me or I should dial it back. So I dialed it back to 2.5 grams and my levels came back to where they were before I took the supplement at all. So just to have that capability to see, as you're trying different lifestyle changes, interventions, whatever you want to call them, and to be able to see pre and post is such an empowering thing that I think people are really going to lean into. And you're starting to see this in the marketplace in general, but I think having the measurement capability that we do is going to be a key contributor for understanding and improvement.
I think it just answers the fundamental question. If I try this or try that, how do I know it works?
Which is most supplements, right?
Right.
Actually, you take all these supplements.
Yeah.
Not just supplements, different exercise routine, different sleep routine.
Yep.
Like, how do we know it worked? Like, do you feel better? Well, maybe. Like, versus actually quantifying it in a formula. Like,
And you might feel better in the short term, but what is it doing to you long term? Like, I don't know about you with creatine. I took creatine for the first time, I don't know, a year ago. I went to the gym. I'm like, oh, I just felt like I felt strong. I could lift and I felt amazing. But hang on, if it's hammering my kidneys, maybe the short term, gratification of being able to lift an extra 10 pounds is not actually ideal.
Right.
But I think this is really cool in the sense we've talked a lot about having a platform where people can actually be their own N of one and be able to try things out, see how they look, get your blood work done, get all the tests done, and actually see if there's improvement. Yep. And even I like the idea of the cognitive side of things. For sure. Who did I see? Rory McIlroy. I saw him interviewed, and he was taking 10 milligrams of creatine in the morning and another 10 at night.
Wow.
And that was right after.
We should test his kidney score.
Seriously, Rory, if you're listening, I know you're local, mate. Come on in, and we'll do a full test.
Yeah.
When we have the brain health score too, right? Which is a lot of people are taking the higher doses on the creatine because of the recent research on that. So what do I say to that? Well, I won't have an opinion until I see what it does to your data, see if it actually increases those scores.
And that's the thing, is trying to find the right balance. Like you might find your strength goes up or your heart looks great or whatever. But if other ones are decreasing, then we're trying to find the right balance across the board, right?
It's that holistic view, right?
I think that was going back to your question of what has this changed the most? Like developing the system has made me realize that it isn't all about like my 10 years of worrying about my cholesterol and cardiac events. When I saw my cardiac health score was great and my metabolic health score was great, I realized I didn't have to work so much on that. But then, wait a second, my kidney score was not so great. And it turns out when you correlate to mortality, the kidney score is actually more important than the cardiac score. So that told me, I need to focus there. Let's focus on kidney health over the other two. And it also told me to focus a lot on brain health, mainly because I do have one of the E4s, so I'm at elevated risk for getting dementia later in life. And so that made me really focus on that. And our research and data shows us that you can actually counter the risk of genetic predispositions with the right lifestyle.
It makes you think, not to get morbid, but it's like, what do you want to die of? Or how do you want to die? This is not meant to go down a morbid, but it makes me think like this. Like I kind of go, a severe heart attack actually could be the better way to go than long-term kidney disease or dementia and these other things that people are worried about.
Well, remember when we've surveyed audiences for this question, including out at IFM where David gave the talk in San Diego, there was probably a couple hundred physicians in the room and different disciplines, but a lot of physicians. And we surveyed what's the thing that you're most fearful of from a chronic disease perspective. And brain or cognition was the number one on the list, right? And it makes sense if you think about, like you were just alluding to, if a heart attack knocks you out, you're kind of none the wiser. If you have, dementia, Alzheimer's, something that's impairing your ability to function, boy, that's a tough life. Right?
Yeah. We're all going to go, believe it or not, and it's like, I do this with Laura all the time. I'm like, you realize in 100 years, not even our kids will be alive.
Yeah.
And 100 years in the whole big Maybe. Right? Actually, now that we're building such a great longevity company, our kids might be still. But I'm like, gosh, you just want to make sure you're living hard and dying short at the end. That's my whole thing. Again, not getting morbid, but anything else surprising in your lessons personally, David, from anything that you've sort of done this past year where you're like, oh, this is interesting. I'm either going to work on this in my interventions or I've learned this about myself?
Well, I think the whole dementia thing led to some aspirations. Like right now, and we focus a lot in podcast 8 about being able to predict metabolic disease extremely well. So you can actually, again, we shouldn't look at it as I'm healthy, and then all of a sudden I have diabetes. It's really a spectrum, and you can measure someone along that spectrum, and you can see where you are, intervene, and our current blood test can measure that extremely well and accurately. Whereas for something like dementia, the current blood work is insufficient. So there are predictors. Again, we do have scores that work as well as they can with the blood work we have. Certainly grip strength is the top predictor, but also blood sugar level and some others are predictors of dementia. But the real test is coming. I think we're going to develop that in the next year or two, where we're actually using some more advanced technologies, and we've seen enough data to suggest that you could predict the path toward dementia 30, 40 years in advance.
Wow.
So even at my age, in my early 50s, I would be able to see like my score change, progress toward or away from dementia when I'm probably at risk when I'm in my 80s. So to me, that's an aspiration. We've seen in the data that we can do it, but because it uses more advanced technology than what's currently offered, it's going to take a couple years to get this out there.
Dave, are you being cagey intentionally about that technology?
So no, I mean,
I was going to mention it, but I didn't want to mention it.
We can always edit.
yeah. So really, that technology, it goes into proteomics, and we've seen on big data sets with proteomics that you can predict dementia many years, like many decades in advance.
So that's maybe a good segue into a question that I have. This maybe takes us into thinking about 2026, which I know we wanted to touch on, and perhaps beyond. Dave, when you think about the utilization of blood biomarkers is kind of the core component in our models today, as well as some physical measures, waist, weight, blood pressure, some other vitals, resting heart rate. When you think of genetics and proteomics, since you just mentioned proteomics and its potential influence or understanding of dementia risk, what do you think the timeline looks like for those two elements, and how are you thinking about them with the team?
Yeah, so genetics we're very close on. Genetics, there's a very reliable system for measuring. So in 2026, we should have genetics offered to everybody. So we're already able to run genetics models on our internal test group. Proteomics, there's a bit more to be developed on the technology side. We're actually working with a company called Molecular U, and collaborating, and they're sort of the proteomic experts. We're the data scientists. We're developing a panel with them that will be able to measure much more advanced. So again, we're going to go from on type 2 diabetes, the current blood work is fine, but on dementia, we're going to go from 0 to 100 on being able to predict dementia. But even on things like cardiac events, I mean, we have a pretty good model based on blood work. We've seen we can get a much more accurate model with proteomics. So in all these various areas of being able to measure and avoid diseases, once that test's out there, it'll be a game changer.
That's massive. And it's driven by, someone like yourself who has seen it in their genetics and going, well, hang on, I want to get ahead of this. I guess the question I have, knowing these things, what, I often get from people, well, what are my interventions? What can I do about it? And we've talked about it a lot on this show, like sleep, exercise, take out the bad in your diet, maybe do some mental performance type work. I call it majoring in the majors. You mentioned grip strength at the moment being the number one predictor. Have you changed the way you train because of that?
Yes, I would say in the last year and a half, I've added a lot more resistance training. And I put on more muscle mass. I would say body fat's the same, but I'm maybe 5 pounds, 6, 7 pounds heavier. So I would say, yeah, it did change my behavior to see that this would prevent.
So when we're
dementia.
saying grip strength, we're talking strength and power as a whole to some degree. It's right.
That's the thing. We see when we look at the biological mechanisms, it's more through muscle mass, and so we believe that grip strength is
it's a proxy for strength.
Proxy for strength and muscle mass.
Yeah. I heard
farmers carries. If you do
farmers carries, Peter Attia is always talking about. But I heard Peter Attia say this once too, and we'll throw it out here. But he was talking about, when we're young and we kick our toe, our strength, which converts to power, we can quickly collect ourselves so we don't fall. As we get older, our strength declines and hence our power and our reaction time, they're all correlated. And he said, so when you get into your 70s and 80s, it's actually, you need to keep that strength up to keep the power up, to keep the reaction time so you can actually recover if you do kick your foot and fall, because falling is the thing that often takes people out. Did you guys hear that one? Or yeah. I thought that was really cool. I was like, okay, that's enough for me to go.
It's like a cascading decline in health. People break a hip or something else, and they never really fully recover after that type of event.
Yeah.
And that goes a lot to the quality of life too.
Yeah.
So we don't know for sure. We don't know for sure that the more muscle mass leads to less cardiac risk of a certain amount, but certainly from a quality of life standpoint, it's very compelling.
Yeah. And vanity.
Yes.
Just kidding. Now, look, you brought up 2026. We're recording this at the end of November. This will be our December release. It's been a great year, 2025. A lot of learnings for Voloridge Health. It's been fantastic. The team is growing. The podcast got started, and we're well on our way. But 2026, Barry, how's it look like for you when we're looking at some of the consumer things that you're building out?
Yeah, it's looking very promising and exciting. We're intending to launch the consumer app in early 26. Could be as early as January if things come together as swiftly as we hope, but hopefully not much later than that. So a lot of the things we've talked about, today and throughout the podcast are all tools and things that we'll be able to provide to consumers. We are intending to have a free period, adoption. And as we've discussed before, there's an altruistic component to what we're doing. We definitely want to spread good health to the masses as best we can. So adoption and exposure is the the thing that's paramount in the early going. We're looking forward to we've got, as mentioned, a couple hundred new people on the wait list. And
can people sign up for the wait list from this podcast?
I believe so.
We can put that on our YouTube or whatever. So. I'm looking at the marketing team. We can do that. Okay. Yeah. So we can, if you're listening to this, please sign up for the wait list and we'll keep you posted on when that's all come out. Absolutely. Give me a high level overview of the app, what people can expect.
Sure.
Right now.
So the first thing is it's really the scoring dashboard for these chronic health areas, right? And call them the wellness areas given the state we're at. So these areas of your health that are the most important to monitor based on events and outcomes throughout life. So things like, heart, lung, liver, kidney, et cetera, things that we've talked about, brain. And so the holistic view is that you get to see your scores across, these different wellness dimensions, right? So that you really get a chance to say, well, where are the areas that I need to address the most? Hopefully there's 0 that are in dire need or, poor state. But if you do have 1, out of 6, which hopefully is the limit for most people, you can really start to dial into that or dive into it and see, okay, based on this area that I need to spend more time thinking about, what are the biomarkers that are the most influential towards that area that I'm focused on. And then, if you drill down next level, it, has the metrics that we discussed, where it can show you where you want to live, in the range for a given biomarker. So whether it's Cystatin C, GGT, A1C, things we've talked about today, you can track down and go, okay, maybe brain is the area that I need to focus on the most. I go into that and I see, maybe CRP or A1C is the area that's having the most negative influence. Then I can dial into that and see, okay, this is the area that I want to live. And the really neat thing about, the app and our system is the time series, right? I can flip back and forth to different blood tests and different scores in the time series to understand how my progression is, going back to, my use of creatine as a supplement, just being able to jump along that line and go, here's where my level was at this point, here's where it is at this point. So that's the foundational thing. Some of the other bells and whistles, as we know, we give people an assessment of their health. The next question is, great, what do I do about that, right? Mm-hmm. So David and the research team are building, kind of through the translational department, interventions that will eventually provide on a, kind of customized or personalized basis. In the here and now, we have some, what I'll characterize as a general intervention. We talk about on this podcast a lot, exercise, right? Mm-hmm. Where people can go in and see, based on their wearable data, we'll give a recommendation on which exercise program level they should be at, which is basically combination of minutes and segmentation of minutes within different buckets, such as resistance, different cardio zones, et cetera. And we gamify it, make it points-based system. You can see a leaderboard. So it's been an engaging thing for the team that's been beta testing this to trial. Last thing I'll touch on is we do have some data collection components that fall outside of blood biomarkers and things like blood pressure. However, you can do that in the app as well. So we have, it's called Daybook right now. It's a backstop way for people to go in and log data. You can even log things like mood or nutrition aspects. That's going to evolve probably the most because there's some cool technologies with LLM and the like that we're testing and building that will make this more conversational, right, for folks that want to just converse with the app and their phone about being asked things that they should be logging, right? So, and the app would, for example, suggest, hey, Greg, I haven't gotten your blood pressure reading or your waist measurement reading in a couple weeks. If you can do that today, let's check back in and I'll log that for you, nice. Right? So the more of that kind of data we can log, the more, correlations, relationships that we can show in the long run.
Cool. But David, before I throw to you, I got one quick follow-up, and it actually comes from one of the questions that was asked at your talk on the weekend, and I know that's front and center for most people. Somebody's data. What are we doing with somebody's data? People are worried about data security. Obviously, that's a big thing for us as a data science company. Just to put people at ease, what happens with it? Well,
privacy is of utmost importance, to us, and so we're going to use the highest standards to protect people's data. There is an opt-in, consent mechanism that they're permitting us to use it for research on an anonymized basis, so that we can look at the relationships of different data elements. We're going to do all the proper things and give people an opportunity to participate in our research as we go and share, of course, those research findings over time.
They can opt to delete their data anytime.
Perfect. I think that's just always, anytime you're talking data, I feel like that's the first question people, what's going to happen to my data? Yeah. So I think that's a good one to get in front of it. And David, look, you guys on the science and the research team, you've got a couple of studies you're doing right now on the research side. Are you planning, can we talk about those yet, or are we waiting to talk about those? And have you got more studies that you're wanting to do next year?
Yeah, we have a number of goals for 2026. One of them is we do want to run some studies with our research framework and also reanalyze several other studies with our research framework, so we can actually give more specific intervention suggestions for people. They'll know which interventions affect which scores the most. Because that's sort of, once people see the scores and they see kidney health or whatnot, the next question is, what do I do about it? So we want to be able to answer that question. I would say a second goal of 2026, early in the year, we'll be ready to release our API so that other businesses and platforms can incorporate the same world-class data science into their products and give better assessments to their people without having to build a data science team. And I would say, and part of that throughout the year, we hopefully by later in the year, we'll be able to include genetics as well into those health risks and assessments.
Well, there's a lot happening, you guys. It's going to be a big 2026. We didn't mention the club that we'll also sort of be leaning into a little bit. Again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but there's a lot happening. The data science team, from everything from genetics, proteomics, and then all the research findings, there's a lot of lifting for you guys. All exciting work though. Every time I talk to David, he lights up when we talk about data science and the findings in health. So it's very cool. And Barry, you're lighting up when it comes to, I want to get out there and show the world what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Eudemonia this past weekend, I feel like was a really good, it was a really great catalyst for the team to go out and say, hey, world, we're here.
It's exciting to me because we've been living this system. We've been prototyping, living the system. And you look back at the old system and you realize how much it's lacking. And now we're at the point where we can share that system with, frankly, everybody else who wants it and can get the same benefits.
Yeah, it's definitely affirmation. We're super excited, needless to say, about what we're building and what we're doing. When you see it through somebody else's eyes, which we got to see this weekend, that's pretty awesome, right? It's that confirmation. Okay, we're going down the right path, and this is going to touch people's lives in a potentially very positive way.
Yeah, David, I didn't tell you. Wednesday night after I went to the kids' karate, I had to text Barry right away because I had just such a great. I shared the app with the couple of mums sitting next to me, and just their buy-in was just unbelievable. And so not to just, make this a whole selling podcast, but it was just a cool feeling.
Yeah,
anybody that's in a startup world or anything to just hear that little bit of positive affirmation back. It was just it was like what we're building, I think we all believe in it. Yeah. And you get these little tastes back every now and then. You're like, okay, this is what we need.
It's great feedback, and to see people whose lives are changed as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool, guys.
Well, one thing, Dave's talk from Eudemonia, I think, is available on YouTube in 2 weeks. Is that the over and under?
Yeah, we'll have that up. We're going to probably have snippets through the YouTube this show as well. But if you want to go listen to David's talk, from Eudemonia, that'll also be on our YouTube channel. And if you're at YouTube, while you're there, subscribe to us, share it. We're going to grow this show. We're going to keep giving some really incredible information for people to be able to change their health for the better, make improvements.
We got some big guests lined up for 2026.
We got a lot of big guests lined up. I'm working on quite a great group that we're going to have some really incredible people that are going to ideally be sitting in this studio with us. So I'm excited about that. That's going to be monthly guests. We're also going to have some data deep dives with David and his team on the latest findings, which may not be every month. We're going to, whenever something really cool comes out, we're going to hit one of those as well. So this show is all about sharing our own stories of the world of health, our own learnings, but everything about Voloridge Health and what we're building here. But another great episode, guys. Very cool. Awesome. Episode 10.
Thanks, gents.
In the bank.
That's great.
Cheers, guys.
See ya.